I'm joined by international security analyst Martin Himel and senior defence correspondent Jonathan Regev. Jonathan, kick us off. This is something that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu likes to talk to a lot, Israel's role that it plays in protecting the world from terror attacks. I'm sure you can give us just some examples this year.
Of course. We just heard the example of this incident in France. Again, very similar to this incident in Denmark. Again, if all the information is correct, an Iranian opposition figure that was supposed to be targeted back then at the beginning of the summer in France, and the Iranian activists were arrested following tips by Israel. Not only that, about a year ago, Israel tipped Australian authorities about a bomb that was supposed to be planted on a plane leaving Sydney airport. So this is, of course, something that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu likes to talk about, the fact that the Israeli security services are not only here to protect Israelis, but to protect other friendly countries, Western countries, from terror plots, and if those terror plots come from Iran, even better.
Right, Martin, how does it work? Is Israel actively looking to thwart terror around the world, or is it just by chance that it comes across these plans as it monitors Iran's movements?
Well, it's a strategic policy, basically, to watch what Iran is doing on the nuclear front, on the terror front. Let's not forget that Iran backs Hezbollah, backs many groups in Yemen, for example, and pro-Shiite groups in Europe. They're watching all these movements. They have very effective intelligence on Iran. And when they do this, every so often they get a golden nugget like this, which points out a threat against another country, and then leverage for political capital, because obviously Denmark and France will feel indebted to a certain degree to Israel because it thwarted a plot.
And Jonathan, we've seen incidents where countries that are allied with Israel, they've been angered by the Mossad's techniques. Tell us about that.
Of course, because in this world of covert activities, let's call it this way, I don't think I'm putting a big secret here that countries use false documents, false passports. And Israel has been exposed a couple of times. There was an incident more than a decade ago in which Israeli operatives were arrested using false New Zealand passports, which led to a big crisis between the two countries back in 2010 in a successful operation to kill a Hamas operative, Mahmoud al-Mabhouh, in Dubai. There were various Israeli agents, and the Dubai police was able to expose basically all of them and all of the false passports they were using, Canadian passports, British passports, Australian passports, and that, of course, led to crisis with those specific countries. I think everybody knows, all the secret services around the world, they know that everybody uses false documents. That's true, but I think those friendly countries are telling each other, be very careful, don't be caught. As long as you're not caught, we're fine. If you will be caught, we will have no other choice but be angry at you.
Right, Martin, how does this work? Does the Mossad have to employ measures which actually anger their counterparts in these allied countries in order to get the job done?
Well, to be honest, that's quite passé these days. I mean, taking a passport and going in and doing physical human intelligence in another country happens. Of course it does. But there are many, many more sophisticated ways to do things. For example, when the Israelis were spying on Iranian negotiators who were negotiating the nuclear agreement with the United States, they used a virus that was eventually caught by Kaspersky and put those viruses into hotels so they could go through the hotel system and go into the TVs and the telephones and turn them on when they're not being used to hear everything the Iranians were saying. There are many, many ways. There's mobile nano devices, many, many ways to spy on Iranians and catch their communications. Going there physically with passports has been time immemorial. I'm sure it's still done. But there are many sophisticated ways to hear and see what the Iranians are doing involving cyber technology.
Now, Martin, here in this instance, we have a theory presented by the Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif on his Twitter account today that these incidents are all part of a greater strategy by Israel to topple the Iran nuclear deal. What do you say to that?
I am sure they would like to use anything they find to do exactly that, to dislodge, disrupt, eventually topple the Iranian regime. I don't think Israel alone can do it, but I'm sure it would like to provide ammunition to the world, especially those countries signed on the nuclear deal, that, hey, Iran is trying to come into your countries, kill people who are in your countries, violate your sovereignty, to change their opinions about Iran. I don't think it will topple any deal. I don't think it's going to change fundamentals of foreign policy, but it does put dents into them. And it's very useful to the United States, and it scores points with countries who are often very critical of Israel's policy, especially when it comes to the occupation of the West Bank and the peace process. So it is leverage to use with those countries, and also ways of denting Iran's image around the world, which is a useful Israeli interest.